Merry Christmas, everyone. Welcome back to the podcast Under Your Bed. Sitting over there is Taylor, your hostess,
happy
and
holidays.
I am CJ, your host. Woo! And today we are reviewing Black Christmas 1974.
Yes, go
Basically
classic,
about
guys.
a
Go
sorority
classic.
who gets. Oh yeah, forget the remake.
Remakes,
OG
yeah.
all day. So this is about a sorority who gets stalked over their Christmas break and murder ensues, oh my.
Oh, and we love a horror holiday.
Oh yeah. I guess before we get to the movie, we should probably fill in the new listeners.
Yeah, if this is your first time joining us, and sorry if you're a longtime listener and you're hearing this and it's very repetitive to you, but how each episode goes is we will give you a little cast and crew breakdown, let you know, do we think it's scary? Do we think it's worth a watch? Following our little break, we have a themed cocktail for you. We'll do a deep dive, including a full plot rundown. So if you need a review or if you've decided to not watch the movie, you'll be up to date. And then we do a deep dive critique into all the things we like, don't like, themes that come up, characters who were awesome. So yeah, enjoy that, I hope.
Absolutely. I have a lot of fun every episode. I hope y'all have a lot of fun every episode.
Me too.
But so Black Christmas is a lot of fun, and one of my favorite things I like about the movie is that it's directed by Bob Clark, who went on to make A Christmas Story.
I mean, you literally could not
Who
get
knew?
more opposite. Like, I love that he did Christmas and was like, I will take it in each direction and go full ham on each end. I think it's awesome.
That is fantastic, and you know, I think there's a lot of merit to by understanding one version of A Christmas Story, you can tell another version of A Christmas Story. So
100.
play off a lot of those like Christmas time tropes, perhaps.
Oh, yeah.
And great writing. This is one of those movies that had just phenomenal dialogue throughout, written by Roy Moore. Outside of that, I don't know if there's too much to say about the crew, other than it's pretty much the whole crew stuck together from this movie going on to make A Christmas Story. So if you've seen A Christmas Story, you've seen
And Porky's,
the key
a
crew,
lot of
at work there too.
Porky's crew members as well, actually, including even into the acting side of things, where Claire's boyfriend, who's Art Hindle, he actually he was in Porky's as well. He has a bit of a minor role in this, but you might know him if you're a Cronenberg fan. You'll know him from The Brood, which is awesome. There's a ton of people in this. I think we say that a lot, but leading our crew is Olivia Hussey, who I think is best known from Romeo and Juliet via the 70s, and on the horror end, she was in the It mini-series, which is kind of fun. Then her boyfriend is Kurt, I think it's Dula. I don't know. Sorry, I probably botched that. But he's Dave in 2001: A Space Odyssey. And it took me like 3 rewatches of this movie to realize it was, I can't let you do that, Dave. Like, I was like, oh, it's Dave.
I did not catch that at all. Love it.
It's so good. Also, huge film alums here. We have Margot Kidder, who would go on to be fucking Lois Lane. Hello, from Superman. She's playing our party girl Barb.
Hey.
Also in Amityville Horror for the horror reference. And another big horror icon here is John Saxon, who you might best know as Nancy's dad from A Nightmare on Elm Street. So it's really fun to see how many of these people actually went on to do more horror films or more like prominent films moving forward, because this is all like pretty early in their careers, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, they really had a cast that went on to do quite a bit.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
So, it makes sense, because this is one of those movies that, it's from the 70s, so it's a little slower pace, but it's really rich in character development, and that comes from the writing, of course, and the actors just really holding the screen. And it's always fun to see so much conflict on screen, even in situations that feel like tangential to the central plot, or kind of are helping to establish like the little power struggles throughout, kind of that cat and mouse game that everyone's playing, not just the cat and mouse between the sorority and this anonymous killer. So,
oh, for sure.
There's a lot of fun action there.
The dynamics feel really natural, which I think is one of the selling points of the movie. And as opposed to its remake, its tragic remake, these characters feel like real human beings. Compared to cartoon caricatures, it's just too much in the remake. But this one, I legitimately feel like even the characters who have less screen time feel really fleshed out.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And everyone that gets killed on screen, well, everyone that gets killed, you're sad to see go. Yes. Because they did kind of capture your heart in some way at some point, and there was a lot of empathy built for their characters before they got off. So, I mean, what else are we liking about this movie?
It's one of those rare cases where, I guess not rare because Psycho probably showed us that that's very efficient, but not showing things, also Jaws obviously too, but not showing things can be so much more productive than giving us the extreme gore or giving us a backstory or whatever. So what I really enjoy about this is how minimalist it is in a way, but it also, your brain does all the work. So it feels really extreme and a lot of times it's really not when you actually watch it.
I definitely agree. It's the plot is very simple, right? It's just this person is kind of remotely terrorizing this sorority house, and the women in the sorority house and the cops are trying to figure out who it is, what the potential motivation is, and there's only a handful of kills that happen kind of quickly and are spread throughout the movie. But the movie is really, like you're saying, about that kind of lurking danger, that presence that's just kind of constant and unknown, which is where the fear comes from. So pretty effective, especially for the 70s, about building those suspenseful, kind of unsettling moments.
For sure. And I obviously, I have to touch on this. We'll get in more detail later, but it really does have a very strong feminist presence, which is very surprising given that like cast and crew are like pretty much all male. Not cast, but crew-wise, it's all male. But like just some of the things like getting the obscene calls, not necessarily being believed, having kind of like aggressive male figures in your life. It's very, very progressive. And I guess in a sense that makes sense because the 70s was a time that was pretty progressive for female rights and female empowerment. But it is pretty cool to see like a man deliver on that in a way that like I'm just shocked in a way that Bob Clark is the guy. He did Porky's and then he did Porky's was after, but still doesn't feel like the same person in a way.
Yeah. I mean, the story is really like touching on sort of like culture clashes between like conservative ideas of what's proper and like liberal lifestyles, everything from just partying as like a college student to, the real life dilemmas like abortion with your significant other. So it's pretty impressive to see that on screen, and the conversations are as relevant today as they were in the 70s, which might be unfortunate, but it's kind of timely that this comes back up.
Oh my God, 100%. I just like that the conversations, though, also feel very nuanced. There's nothing one-dimensional about what's happening, and you can kind of understand character motivations even if you don't necessarily agree with them. So I do really like that it's just wild to me that this came like a year after Roe v. Wade. Like, I think it's a pretty fucking ballsy move, in my opinion, to throw out an abortion plotline in the middle of your Christmas horror movie. But it's well made, though. Like, it's really well done. And it just like serves as good character motivation and a good understanding for who these people are and the things that they do.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Outside of the like really rich character development and the really great dialogue, I don't think there's anything that's like truly captivating about this movie. Like from a cinematography and editing point of view, I thought it was very well done, but very traditional. But there's enough going on to keep your interest. I would say that this is probably not a movie for all modern audiences. You probably are going to want to have an interest in horror or film review and critique of some aspect to really get into this movie.
For sure. I agree, because I think a lot of people even just see like a date on it and they're like, well, I'm out. Like when you see 60s, 70s, which is, as we've said on this before, a damn shame, because you're missing out on so much. You're not getting the full picture of the horror movie history if you do that. But the thing for me that's so like endearing about this especially is this solidified so many things that we see in horror today. Like this was why we have so many of these other things happen. And of course, like they borrow elements from urban legend stuff. Technically speaking, this isn't the first slasher movie. I think in the 60s, I want to say, is probably when that actually happened. With that, I can't think. Peeping Tom. Oh my God, there we go. I got it. With Peeping Tom. However, this really, John Carpenter saw this and he ran with it. So they walked so John Carpenter could run, and we could all get slasher as it is today. So in that way too, I feel like if you go in and you're like, okay, well, yeah, I've seen this, and this, it's like, well, this was kind of the first movie to do that though. So it's important to like keep that in mind as well.
Yeah, I definitely can appreciate that. Overall for the audience, where are you landing on how scary it is and your overall rating?
It's tough because in a way, this is a slow-paced film. It takes its time. It's kind of a slow burn. You get these moments that are very scary, but it is like a slow burn to get to the end. And even the end is very like ambiguous in a way, and we'll get to that later. So it's not traditionally scary, I would say. However, there's a lot thematically that's very scary, especially for a female. So for me, just because the idea of somebody making these calls, stalking your life, taking out your friends one by one, I'm going to bump it up beyond my usual 2, which I would give like a good movie in terms of scares, and give it a 2.5. It doesn't, because of the time, because of the pacing, it doesn't quite get to the 3 for me, but I give it a solid 2.5. How about for you? You're going to rate it low,
this is
aren't
very
you?
interesting to hear, because it's probably because of the male versus female perspective. I don't know another answer, but this is the rare occasion where I'm going to say it's a 1 in terms of scare.
Oh my God.
I just felt that the suspense was not strong enough for really. This movie relied on suspense for its scare, and it just wasn't strong enough. And then I suppose that there were some like intense phone calls. I was pretty impressed by how unhinged some of the phone calls were.
Yeah.
But they're just so like, I don't know how to describe it, like so unhinged that it's almost comical at times. So, like the people sitting there listening, like some of them are taking it as a joke. Some of them are taking it very seriously and are very afraid, the sorority sisters. So I ended up just falling to more of like, this is kind of funny.
Oh my God. And see, I was definitely like from the female perspective of being like harassed, like how scary that is. So
yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. There's nothing funny about making that kind of phone call. But so anyways, where are you landing on overall rating for the movie?
This is an interesting movie where actually the more times I've viewed it, the more I've come to appreciate how well it's done. And also actually find it scarier, which is a very weird thing for me. I almost never do that with movies. They progressively come less scary the more I watch it. But the more I
Very
pick up
interesting.
on subtleties and things where I'm like, God, I never even thought about that before. I think for that, I'm actually going to give this, it's definitely not a 4 for me because it's not flawlessly executed. Again, you've got to be Citizen Kane level for me to get a 4. But actually, and I bet I'm going to rate this higher than you too. I'm going to give this a 3.5. Actually, I the more I've watched this, the more I've been like, God damn, that's a fucking great movie. But it's taken me time. So I want to preface that by saying, I don't even think my first viewing, I thought it was that good. And I've just really come to love it. So I do want to put that in there.
Very interesting. I can understand that. This is only the second time I've watched the movie, so maybe I have not matured as a viewer enough to appreciate the nuances. But I'm a little bit on the fence between a 2 and a 3.
Okay.
I don't want to cop out and give it a half.
Oh, I did. I had to.
So I'm gonna take the new audience perspective here and give it a 2, so that so people can kind of get an idea of what they're into watching it for the first time. But don't get me wrong, I think that this movie was bold and laid a lot of groundwork, not just as an OG slasher, but also for throwing out some of the themes of, coming to age in the 70s.
Oh, yeah.
Is very poignant and very relatable still.
Fair. I mean, it's fair. Like I said, I don't want to be like misinforming people and say like, I really got everything the first time I watched it. It's really taken a lot of like looking into the film and looking into the production and looking into those finer tuned points where I really, really started to appreciate it. So I don't think it is for everybody. I think it could be dismissed pretty easy on a first viewing if you're somebody who really only digs into new horror, especially. But I would highly recommend giving this watch multiple viewings. Like, whether you watch it around every Christmas time or whatever, I guarantee you're going to get more out of it each time. So hopefully you'll give it a second chance if it's your first time watching it, and you'll appreciate it as much as I do.
Absolutely. So that being said, I think our spoiler-free section is all wrapped up. Hang in, and we're going to get to our deep dive critique and let you know what cocktail we're sipping on today.
Welcome to the podcast Under Your Bed. There'll be drinks, critique, and perhaps a few murders. You're all invited, but once the podcast has begun, there's no way out. The ghosts are waiting, so won't you join me for the podcast Under Your Bed?
Oh. Okay.
Wow.
Okay, no. I could see
There's
it.
the good stuff.
I could
hidden
see
back
it.
there.
Thank you, Mrs. Mack.
Hidden in the back of the toilet seat.
Yeah, or in a book. I'm
Mrs.
gonna do double.
Keeping
I'm
us,
double.
keeping us young with the sherry out of the toilet.
Whew. There we go. That actually was not. I was expecting something like way worse. That was not bad. Actually, I've never had sherry, so that wasn't bad. Okay.
Well, no screams from us today. We just wanted to give our ode, our cheers to Mrs. Mack's.
Oh, the legendary Mrs. Mack.
Sherry drinking.
A booze hound that I can appreciate.
To be in a house with that many women, I got to imagine some booze is necessary. Anyways, today we are sipping on Mrs. Mack's Toilet Punch. Kudos to you, Taylor, for finding an actual Mrs. Mack's drink.
Oh, man. Kudos to the...
Pretty stoked on this, to be honest.
Kudos to the inventors of this cocktail.
To the Shaken Not Scared podcast for hooking it up.
It's really good, actually. So I appreciate it. And I'm even going to pour a little extra sherry in mine, I think,
A wise choice.
Yeah.
So this is a gin and sherry drink. But I think the real ticket to this is the simple syrup that you make along with it, which if you could bottle up Christmas, I think that's Closest we've come.
That smell, the smell that comes off of this simple syrup is kind of incredible. It's very fragrant. It's very potent. Just so if you don't want your house to smell like Christmas, I wouldn't recommend making this. However, it's like, what is it? Like cinnamon, nutmeg.
Christmas
what else
potpourri.
is in it? Cloves. Yeah, it is. It is.
Cloves. Yeah, and then cranberries. Don't forget your cranberries.
Oh, right, of course.
But I'm telling you, this simple syrup, I'm going to use all over the place. I'm putting it on my pancakes. This is delicious.
Oh my gosh, I love that idea. I didn't think about that. But yeah, I like it because you get...
Why not?
The juice of it is obviously quite sweet, but the nice thing is the gin and sherry are so dry that it kind of evens out where you're not getting that terrible gut rot feeling you can get with juicy cocktails, you know?
I totally get
that. So just
that.
a very nice kind of mix.
Well, Taylor, today you're in the hot seat.
Oh, yes, I am.
Walk us through Black Christmas.
Okay, so we open on a sorority consisting of final girl Jess, lush and badass Barbara, the virginal Claire, the caring kind of motherly figure Phyllis, the actual house mother, and definite possible alcoholic Mrs. Mack, who we love and respect. And then we watch on as our she's the best. We watch on as our future killer enters the house undetected, going up like a trellis. I think is that what you call that? Possibly.
Trellis.
A trellis.
Indeed,
yes.
A trellis.
Nailed it. All right. The girls then get a super creepy call from a man that they've dubbed the Moaner, who makes obscenities before saying, "I'll kill you," and hanging up. So super fun.
You don't get those calls?
No, thank God. Honestly, though, as a millennial, I just don't pick up my phone when I get a phone call at all. So
I think it's the modern day equivalent of a dick pic, I think is.
Yeah, but I will say, even though dick pics can be upsetting, this is
minus the murder vibes.
This is far more upsetting. I think, though, dick pics can definitely be upsetting. All right, sorry. All right, off topic there. All right, so one of our sisters, Claire's upset by the conversation, heads upstairs and starts to pack for winter break. But this is short-lived when the killer suffocates her with a plastic bag and places her body in the attic. The next day, Jess meets up with her boyfriend, Peter. Peter. All right. And tells him that she's pregnant but planning on getting an abortion, which causes a huge argument because Peter fucking sucks, as we'll come to find out. After being unable to locate Claire...
douche.
Oh, he's such a douche. After being unable to locate Claire, Barb, Phyllis, and Claire's father file a report with the police, who absolutely suck and dismiss their concerns. However, when it's discovered that a young girl is also missing, the police gather a search party, which Phyllis, Jess, and Claire's boyfriend and Claire's father participate in. Barb is unable to attend due to being incapacitated in her bed, aka super passed out and drunk. While getting ready to leave for her sisters, Mrs. Max thinks she hears her missing cat and heads upstairs to the attic. Just as she discovers Claire's body, the killer unleashes a large hook.
That's Sherry, yo.
Ooh, it's terrible. The killer unleashes a large hook into her face, killing the Sherry-loving legend off screen. God, we love Mrs. Mack, R.I.P. Jess returns to the house in time for another call, seemingly mimicking some of the death groans before the voice yells about somebody named Billy. Jess reports the call to the police, which again is initially dismissed. Jess is then accosted by Peter, who becomes enraged after he fails to convince Jess to marry him and keep the baby. He storms off, telling her that she'll be sorry. Not creepy or off-putting at all.
She'll be sorry.
Ew, so creepy. All right. So a lieutenant at the station hears about the calls and believes they are relevant after the body of the missing high school girl or middle school, I didn't quite catch that, is discovered. Lieutenant Fuller and Phyllis head back to the house to place a tap on the line, and he leaves behind a parked officer outside the house. Later that night, while Jess listens to a group of carolers, the killer murders Barb via stabbing by glass unicorn, one of the most iconic kills of the movie, obviously. Jess receives
and inspired the entire Blade Runner franchise.
Oh my God! Oh my God, I love that. Yes. I even think about that. I'm so into that. All right, Jess receives 2 more calls, one from the killer and one from a wailing Peter, but both are too short to trace. Lieutenant Fuller, who heard both of the conversations, theorizes that Peter may be the caller and subsequent killer, but Jess and Phyllis are pretty unconvinced by this. Phyllis then goes to check on Barb, and the door closes behind her, sealing her fate. R.I.P. Phyllis. Jess begins looking for Phyllis, but is stopped by another call from the killer. The call lasts long enough this time to be traced, and it's discovered that the call is dun 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 coming from inside the house.
Coming from the house.
It's coming from in the house. Fuller attempts to get a hold of the parked officer, but he too has been murdered. Yeah, I know, R.I.P. An officer calls to tell Jess to get out of the house, but Jess, unwilling to leave Barb and Phyllis behind, heads upstairs to, unfortunately, find both their bodies on display. Jess catches a brief glimpse of the killer, but is able to outrun him to the basement. While hiding, Peter breaks into the basement window and approaches her. When police arrive, they find an unconscious Jess and a dead Peter. The police put her to bed in her room, and the camera pans to the attic where we hear the killer talking, so we know it wasn't Peter. The last shot is of the home's exterior while the phone rings. The end. Merry Black Christmas.
Shit. I love it.
Oh my God, where do we start with this one?
Okay.
There's a lot.
Before we go anywhere,
Okay.
I need help. Who the fuck is Billy? Is this just made up from the killer, or does this come from something?
Okay, so I have watched many things trying to decipher this answer, and so it seems like Bob Clark has did, because he's not alive, he did kind of admit that Billy is probably the name of the killer and that Agnes is very likely his sister. Now, what I've seen theorized by videos like Ending Explained, which also, if you've never watched that on YouTube, that guy's fucking awesome. So if you're into getting that shit worked out, any ending to horror movies, definitely check out that channel. But his theory is that, and it's like, again, just kind of context of the calls, is that Billy may have murdered Agnes. He theorizes that the 4 voices you hear in the phone calls are like the mom, the dad, Billy, and then Agnes, or the 4 you're hearing. He thinks that maybe he killed Agnes, or maybe there's like a sexual assault element involved in what's going on. Like the whole, like, don't tell anyone what we did, Agnes, or, you know, that kind of thing. So again, there's just theories. The whole point really is that we don't have a backstory. We don't know who this person is. We can just kind of come up with our own ideas.
I think it's great. And the killer was giving me some serious vibes of some more recent movies, which you could clearly see like a direct link in terms of inspiration back to this Black Christmas. You know, for one, I mean, this might be a little abstract, is the little, in The Exorcist, the little girl, like the way she's talking, like, you fuck me in the pussy, stab my cunt, you know, like I was just hearing that come right across the phone calls,
man.
you know, like,
Yeah,
it was just so unhinged and intense. I was like, I got to imagine that like really, like, Black Christmas broke trail on kind of seeing that intensity on screen. I mean, maybe I'm backwards in terms of my timeline here, but Black Christmas came before Exorcist for sure, right?
I believe so. I swear Exorcist was like later 70s, like maybe 6 or 8, and this would have been 74.
Oh, it was the year before. 1973 was The Exorcist. So
damn it. Okay, take it back. We walk it back.
So
lied.
So probably taking notes from The Exorcist there, but then definitely later movies like Red Dragon, you know, Hannibal Lecter's series there. I can kind of see elements of that killer coming out in Red Dragon that are very similar to this killer here in Black Christmas, you know. So I think it's really fun to like see those ties from this OG movie.
For sure. And obviously, I mean, there's no doubt Halloween took massive inspiration from this by having a killer that is faceless and has a very minimal backstory. And for me, you know, we've talked about this before, but that is so much scarier to me than when you give me this whole thing, which is where, again, I feel like the remake kind of missed for me, was that it really gave him a whole backstory. We got to see the whole thing in ways that I never wanted to see.
Yeah.
But it just like, it kills.
Remakes are always trying to do that.
It kills it. Yeah, it's just don't give it, if it doesn't have a backstory and it worked the first time, don't feel like you need to fill that gap, because it absolutely murders anything that makes it freaky.
Yeah. You know, and I could even see themes like with the phone calls sort of inspiring movies like Scream, right?
Oh,
Where,
for sure.
They take this idea of someone like harassing you over a phone and just running with it. So that's really fun to see.
I have to imagine that Wes Craven saw this movie. I mean, I could be wrong, but the fact that he worked with the same actor who plays a cop in both films, I'm like, well, that's just like a little too coincidental for me to think that there wasn't an inspiration.
Definitely. Well, you know, where we always start, I know we had a little tangent there, but story. How effective was this movie's story?
It's a simple story. If you're just observing it, it seems like a very simple story. But again, I think what we say, or what at least I'm saying, is that gives it the complexity, is that every character is super flashed out. Because Barb, you could write off as like, oh, she's a lush, she's like, oh, whatever, she's a city gal, whatever. But she even has this conversation with her mom, who has dumped Christmas plans with her. And it kind of explains why Barb is like a little harsh or a little off-putting, or, you know, why she's a little aggressive with Claire at the beginning is because she's obviously very upset about her mom dumping her. Like, there's just such complexity to every character that, again, I think it does take a couple of viewings to really get all that. But story-wise, it seems really simple.
You're a real gold-plated whore, mother. That's a great line, right?
Wait, what'd she say?
You're a real gold-plated whore, mother.
Is that what she says? Is that the line?
Oh, yeah, it's fantastic. It's right in the beginning of the movie. She hangs up the phone.
Oh, my God. I remember it vaguely,
That's a
but
great
you got
one
it.
to bust out.
Yeah.
I'm pulling that out on all my friends. You're a real gold-plated whore.
I love it. I mean, what do you think about the story?
So, I love how I really believe in the idea of having a simple plot and then really rich characters, because you do not need to have 500 twists and turns, you know, to make a powerful, strong story. All the themes that they wanted on screen came across through character, through dialogue. The dialogue was not expositional. Dialogue only drove like additional context in terms of character, and then you had this great twist at the end to kind of really give you you know, some sort of like payoff, some sort of like fun takeaway from the movie.
For sure. I think they
Having
set
a
it
simple
up.
plot, that is.
Yeah, I think they set it up nicely too, where it doesn't feel like where I think a lot of these newer films struggle is like trying to sell us on the fake out. And I think this actually was relatively successful in doing that, where Peter looks really fucking suspicious through a lot of this. He's very threatening with Jess. He gets very violent with the piano and busting that up after his concert goes bad. You get that he's kind of at the end of his rope and that his own life has kind of fallen apart, and she doesn't want to marry him, and she doesn't want to have his baby, and he's not going to be the big concert pianist he thought he was going to be. He's around when all the calls are happening. So they set it up well that it's not like, oh, come on, he's definitely not the killer. Even though I think there's like still in your head, you're like, yeah, he's probably not the killer. But I think they sell it better.
Yeah, I definitely agree. It's fun seeing like all the voyeur shots throughout to kind of build that like hidden dark unease, and then you see Peter like lurking around the house later in the film. But yeah, I agree. It's really hard to sell the idea of a Peter character potentially being the killer. And this movie came like kind of as close as you can get without truly nailing it. So props to them for that.
Yeah, the killer's just, I agree, a bit too unhinged for, I think, any of us to feasibly believe that it could be Peter, but they set that up as best as humanly possible.
Yeah, agree. But then at the very end, when he's like really pursuing Jess, you know, in the basement and stuff, you're like, fuck, maybe it actually is him, because at that point he has crossed the line. You know, he's emotionally unstable enough to make those choices. So you kind of begin to question, well, could it possibly be him? And then, I mean, the ending of the movie is just fantastic, where everyone's like, okay, we solved the crime, the murderer is dead, and then lo and behold, Jess is left alone with the killer lurking.
Oh, God.
It's fantastic.
All right, we have to get into the entire ending then, because the end I think is good in so many different ways. So first off, I do want to say something that I think is pretty wild about this movie is that it really does hinge around Claire going missing, and by the end of the movie, she's actually still missing. They never, they don't search the attic. They actually give a reason why they don't do that. They say they're waiting for the state police to come.
That's
and that
so
the
true.
that the morgue is filled up. So there's a good reason why no one's gone up to the attic yet, or why they haven't. And I'm sure obviously eventually they would be discovered. But first off, I find that aspect really, really fucking interesting. But I also just the entire ending where Claire's dad faints finally, like this whole thing has been like so much for him. He's seen like a child's body earlier. Now, like there's all these, you know, he's been looking for his missing kid who's still missing. He faints. That's another thing that I'm just like, oh, wow. Like, it's just kind of amazing that this emotional toll, like the minute that they can take a rest is when he's like done. Like, he just can't. He's in shock at that point. He's just overtaken by what's happening.
Yeah, I mean, and it's just one more of those examples of how the characters are just so richly built. You know, even perhaps the most like minimal roles, like the kind of dumb cop, if you will, at the station. You know, he's still like seems to have authentic motivations, and you know, he's trying to be this like good guy that's a little overwhelmed by the position he's given and clearly out of sync with the times and doesn't keep up, which causes the conflict. So it's everyone's got a story to tell in the movie.
For sure. And I even like that Claire's boyfriend is present throughout, showing like he's not just some like one expendable character. Like he's there for the search party. He's taking care of her dad when he is like overcome with emotion. Like it's just everybody who has the most minimal part really feels like a human and is like motivated by something. And then I just love that end is so ambiguous, where the optimist in me wants to say, Jess made it and she's fine, but the pessimist of me is very like, oh, there's a lot of damning evidence that she did get murdered at the end. I mean, what's your take on the end?
Fuck. Man, I do not have a great answer.
Which is probably the point. I want to
say that there's enough people coming and going for her to have survived. You know, how many more bodies can you pile in the attic before this shit like gets unraveled?
For sure. I think it's like the point for me that again, this was like not even a first or second viewing. Like I was like, well, she made it. Like the killer's just calling. Like to let you know it's not Peter. But what I didn't really pick up on is that he calls every time he's killed somebody. Every single time is when he calls. And so that last call at the end then makes it seem...
Really?
Yeah, because even... Again, this is like...
Because someone dies in the park, he calls. Someone goes missing, he calls.
Yep.
Now, roommate dies, he calls. Wow,
Yeah,
I did not catch that.
And it could... that murder of the little girl is somewhat of it. Again, it's somewhat ambiguous where it's not a definite that he killed her, but it would make sense. Again, this is from much research that it would make sense that he killed this girl... on his way to the house, or that it may have even been motivation to keep the girls
implied
in the house. And so that's why he would have made that first call is when he gets into the house, and then would have made the first call after killing that girl because she died a day before or whatever.
Yeah, let's talk about this killer character a bit. He's just so unhinged.
Yes.
That it's great, but at times just feels like a little too off the rails. What was your take?
It is a lot, but I think the voice acting actually really sells it for me, where I can move past the thinking it could be kind of funny, because I do think, for me personally, I think the voice acting sells it. And if I got a call like that, I'd absolutely pee my fucking pants. There's not even a question. I would lose my shit.
Sure.
And I like that it starts off very obscene and very sexualized, and then it just gets into this kind of weird possible backstory thing and integrating the death, the death moans
psychosis.
And stuff. So I think it's actually pretty creepy.
Right. Definitely. I was really impressed by the voice acting across the phone, and I wanted to know, was it really all one actor, or did they actually work in some additional voices? Because it was so good at times, just the back and forth of a woman's voice and then a guy's voice, and it was just so wild.
It is different. It is different people, or at least there's 2 or 3 different voices. I think the one guy might have done multiple, but he obviously didn't do the female. And then there's something where he compressed his throat to make that, give it that kind of raspy sound that it has to it. And I guess even they recorded some dialogue and the girls were listening to that, but it wasn't nearly as volatile as the end result, because they didn't want the girls to look super shocked compared to what actually comes out of the phone call. So I think that was a really interesting choice too, to have the girls not be super reactive to this guy, almost it's kind of a norm to get these obscene calls, which I think probably was more normal in the 70s than it would be today. I would hope.
Well, probably more of an occurrence because it's less traceable back then, right?
Well,
nowadays, you're oh, this is exactly the location it came from. Fuck you.
Yeah, totally.
And you're going the fuck to jail right away.
Mm-hmm.
I loved the murders in this movie. Yes. I felt that they were very raw and real, and not overly dramatic and outside the box. The first death on camera was suffocating in the saran wrap, plastic wrap, whatever, and it was a pretty great moment.
How obsessed are you too, at least I am, with that shot of her in the chair and the bag is in her mouth? And I guess that actress was a swimmer, so she's oh, I got this. Did it every time. But I would be in panic mode if someone's keep a bag sucked into your mouth. Don't worry about it. But the shot is fucking incredible, I think, with her in the window and it rocking and the bag right up to her face.
Yeah, I do think that's pretty great. Pretty great that you can get an actress to do that. I can imagine some lawyers being in a panic attack over that scene, but I was a little curious why we kept going back to see her dead body in the attic, rocking in the chair so many times, where it's okay, we get it, she's dead. Why are we seeing this now? But I think what the intention might have been was basically to like bring the audience back to the fact that the killer is in the attic while the women are downstairs and home alone, right? So I think the intent was to build some suspense, but it just sort of just was like confusing. Like, why are we seeing this dead body again?
I think the interesting part of that is, again, they're actively looking for her. And then we're getting these shots that their search is completely not going to go anywhere. And these reminders that, like, she's gone and everyone's in serious danger because they're out looking like there's some kind of hope. And you get the shot back to her and you're like, there's no hope. This is not going well. She's already dead. Nobody's realizing it. Like, and it actually, to me, just makes it like, almost like a bit sadder, especially regarding the boyfriend and they're all still, again, they're actively looking for her. She is long fucking dead. And I feel like those shots solidify that. Yeah. For me, that's just my take, though. I don't know if that's what anyone meant to have happen with that. So I don't know.
Yeah. I very much like the second death as well, with the swinging hook into the face and then her body being like sucked up through the attic.
Oh, Mrs. Mack, it's pretty fun. She was the fucking best. I was so gutted when she died.
She had to go, though. Out of all the characters, it was the right choice for her to be the one.
No, but she is such a cool character to me because, you know, you get the house mother and you have a certain expectation of like what that would entail or what that would be. And she's just a little booze hound who actually seems to genuinely like the girls and the girls seem to genuinely like her. She is much more progressive and free than Claire's dad. And I would assume they're like of the same generation. So it's very cool to see that kind of split off between characters of a similar age. And again, she's got toilet Sherry. How can you not fucking like her?
All right, let's talk about how gross that moment was. I know the water in the back of the toilet is clean coming in, but there's no denying that lid and that toilet seat was disgusting. And then she just raw swigged out of it. She didn't rinse it off or nothing. She don't give a fuck.
Plus, also, like, it's not like the girls aren't drinking in the house, so it's not like you don't, like, you need to hide alcohol. Like, I'm like, you're of age, and everyone else is drinking. I just
sort of think that too. Like, why are they hiding it from her? Like, my assumption is that it's a college campus.
Of course,
but in the 70s, I'm pretty sure it was still legal, and on most campuses, they were still wet campuses. Maybe I'm wrong about this, but.
No, I think you're right. That was always, but it just is such a funny moment that I was like, I don't really care. But I agree, it's literally like the most disgusting thing I can think of.
Yeah.
Before we get out of desk, because I want your personal opinion on this, I think without a doubt, Barb has the best death, and I want to hear as a proper filmmaker what you thought of the cutaways, what you thought of how that was filmed. I'm just curious what your opinion is on Barb's death. I need to know what you think of it.
Ooh, debatable about it being the best death.
Oh,
I think I might have. Okay, it might have been like the most fun death, but I truly loved the like raw, visceral quality of suffocating wrapped around the like,
fair.
You know, the plastic.
Very fair.
But I've never seen a death by unicorn, so that was very fun.
Yes.
There were definitely lots of great cinematic things happening. You know, for one is, again, going back to that like POV camera where Barb's like reaching up, swatting away hands, and it's like she like lurches forward towards the camera. That's just shoving you into that moment in a very aggressive way. Again, going back to like not seeing everything on camera is effective always, and catching those like close-ups of a bloody hand like slashing around trying to grab something or like find your bearing. Then catching reflections through the Christmas ornaments or whatever that glass reflective was are fantastic moments. You know, shooting in extreme slow motion, like it had to have been like 120 frames a second or even faster than that, is interesting and kind of like reveals the age of the film because of how like kind of shaky that
I can
is.
See
they
that.
just didn't have the equipment to make it
yeah.
look really slick.
Yeah.
But, definitely the appropriate use in that moment. And it turned out to be a very like effective on-screen death.
What do you think of the caroler cuts? Like, what was your take on that?
Oh, the juxtaposition between, cutting back and forth between carolers and unicorn death was brilliant. Because you have the like happy holiday vibes of Christmas, just getting slashed to bits. It's disturbing because it's happening right under their nose and kind of makes everyone feel vulnerable, even the kids. And then it also has this very jarring effect of this happy, cheery music juxtaposed with the great score of like the like violent violins.
Yeah.
It was really working. That was a great moment.
For sure.
Largely due to sound design and not seeing everything.
100% on the sound design aspect. And I also like that it's like this moment of respite. Like you get this one moment with Jasper, you're like, oh, carolers, everything is fine. And then it's like, nope, nothing is fine. Everything is terrible. It's like you can't even live in that moment of relief for longer than a minute. Yeah.
Right before that moment, we get the like two goons at the door kind of like helping the hunt. And I guess to your point, like, comedy is the cousin of drama or something. Like, you have to put people at ease before you can punch them in the face with horror or drama. So I suppose that's how that's functioning. But I was also like, okay, these guys are way too fucking stupid to be like believable. Like,
but also like,
stop pointing the gun at the damn girls.
Oh my God, seriously, yes on that. But I think it's funny because I think like, again, this is just like first viewing. I was like, what are these two knuckleheads doing here? But then I'm also like, it's clearly a small town. It's clearly people getting overly excited about being helpful or doing whatever. And the tone is so off-putting. They're talking about child murder and they're like, a dead body was found. But I think the moment with Phyllis and Jess is so important because they needed like a second to laugh about how ridiculous these two fucking people were and a second to breathe before we get right into this like super iconic violent death. Which again isn't really actually that violent because we're not seeing any of the stabs, but our brain puts us there for sure. So I think it really balanced the comedy well, or even like that fellatio joke pays off. I think even after Barb is already dead at that point.
God.
I think she's already dead when that happened. I could be wrong. I could be misremembering, but it's just funny that like
I think you're right.
It comes in, but it never feels jarring, I guess is like the thing I want to say. Is there's never, like when that joke comes to a head, it's actually very, well, oh God, I just
you walked into that one.
Right into that one. It feels like a very necessary time for that to happen, and it never feels unnatural, and it's kind of nice that Barb is gone, but we almost get this reminiscent aspect after she's gone, if I'm remembering my timeline correctly.
Yeah, kind of like remembering her life, her spirit.
It's so dumb, but it's such a funny joke. She gave it to you?
It's funny. Well, so that's she gave it to you. Yeah, she gave it to me. It's a great moment, and I want to know, I don't think I found the answer in the movie. Where is this town set? Where's the setting of this movie? Because there's such a clash between sort of like conservative views and liberal views that just ring throughout.
So the town is called Bedlam, which I'm pretty sure is a direct nod to It's a Wonderful Life, if I'm remembering correctly. Not like, I think it was just like a fun nod. I don't even think it might, I don't know if it's a real place. I don't think it is, but I don't know.
A fun nod?
Yeah. Yeah. It's just, again, really bastardizing Christmas in a way that I can totally get behind. I really like it that they're like, let's reference It's a Wonderful Life in the most horrific way possible.
That's funny. Okay. All right. I got you. I mean, like, if you think of it as like a conservative town with university,
college,
like that brings
yeah.
this like liberal perspective,
Yeah.
there's always sort of like that culture clash that happens, and then that just really opens the doors for all of these conversations on camera, right? About like abortion and marriage and sexuality and women's rights to just drink and see men. So
yeah.
curious your thoughts about these themes.
Oh, man. Well, something I think is really interesting is that you have Claire's dad, who, like I said, is obviously has a more conservative viewpoint. He's pretty disappointed that she's living in this sorority house where booze is a thing and there's pictures of grandmothers flipping people off. And he doesn't like that. He's very disapproving. But I'll say he never feels like as staunchly patriarchal as like Peter does, which is interesting because Peter is so much younger.
Right.
Like, he's actually a very, like, yes, he disapproves, but he actively is helping these women. He's not, he's just like, well, I don't like this, but he's never like, I'm getting my daughter out of here. This is a hellhole. He's never like that. Where Peter comes off as this very, like, what should be kind of like, he's a fucking musician. You'd think he'd be like a little bit more chill about things, but he's very traditional, being like, you're gonna marry me. But he plays some very
aggressive, like, classical music. That was very intense.
I couldn't figure out, like, is it supposed to be like, I couldn't figure out, like, is he doing bad? Is he doing good? Because I'm not really understanding.
I know. Is this how it's supposed to sound? Or is he fucking up?
Yeah.
I think he nailed it. That's my interpretation.
But the guys
of the scene.
didn't like it.
Nailed the music.
He looked into it, and the guys watching did not look into it, which is, again, maybe where you get that juxtaposition of, like, a liberal and conservative viewpoint of, like, maybe what music should be. But in his personal life, he's very traditionalist, being like, you're going to marry me, you're going to have a baby, you're going to do this. But I also think that's clinging on to, like, his life is, like, falling apart. He realizes he's not going to be this progeny that he thought he was going to be. And maybe that's why he is kind of clinging on. I don't know. I'm actually kind of curious what your perspective on Peter and that kind of dynamic is.
It's unfortunate, but I think he became one of the more cliche characters. Like, I didn't find any, like, great motivation to him other than being frustrated that his music career is not going the way he wanted it to. And maybe that's enough, but at the end of the day, though, it was still necessary to drive some of these, like, subplots of, like, do women have equal say in the relationship,
Not
or
in
like
Peter's
things like
eyes,
that. Like,
apparently.
or exactly right, like, and does a woman have choice over her own body? And the answer is very clear in the movie of, like, what what the woman decides to do and how she's standing up for herself. I thought there were some of the most poignant parts of this whole movie. And where probably the most redemption of this movie lies.
Which is, like, so interesting, because what I read was that they didn't, like, intend for that to be such a thing, but it was very, to me, reminiscent of Romero casting a black man as his lead in the 60s, and his stance was always like, I just picked the guy who is best for the job. But it's very much a similar thing in this, of them saying, well, we just thought this was like a conversation people would be having. I'm like, I don't know how you can't see that there would be so much more agency to that.
I have two perspectives on that. One is that it is a way of subverting the status narrative, the status quo narrative, right? Like, Well, no, this is just conversations people have in a daily life.
Right.
It's saying like, fuck you. The reality is
Right.
not how you're telling me it is, in the conservative perspective, right? And then also art as a reflection of the world around you. If it was not consciously put in there as like a fuck you, rewriting the narrative, then at the very least it is subconsciously like of the times how the director felt, how the writers felt.
For sure.
So it's all great.
I just think it's something that it does elevate the movie in a really big way, and also just makes Jess so much more of a final girl in that, like, she is not willing to be pushed around by her boyfriend. She makes a very good argument for what she wants, and she's not going to feed in. And, you know, especially as we enter the Christmas time where Hallmark movies are all about getting married to some rando you met over the weekend. It's very,
that's so spot on.
It's so fucking spot on. It's so fucking refreshing, though, to see a movie where the guy's like, I'm going to give up my hopes and dreams and we're going to be together and I'll marry you. And she's like, no, dude, that's not my hopes and dreams. And just because your life sucks doesn't mean my life sucks. And I don't want to marry you because you're desperate. Like, that's not in my wheelhouse of things I want to do. I want to live my life, and that doesn't include a baby. And so I fucking love that this was in the 70s and we're getting a stronger message about female empowerment than we are getting in 2022 with these shitty Hallmark movies.
Ouch.
I know, I lost some people probably on that one, but whatever.
No. If you lost them, fuck them. They don't belong on this podcast. But I was just saying ouch because it's a smack of reality of where we're at today. You know, like the conversation has not progressed enough.
No, fuck no. It's depressing.
But I know we could talk about these themes
oh, yeah. Till high
for
heaven.
hours.
Yeah.
But if we are to return back to just the movie as a horror flick, is there anything else that, you know, in terms of like how effective it was in terms of scares is worth mentioning? You know, what else did it establish in terms of legacy in the horror genre?
Oh, yeah. I mean,
curious your thoughts.
This is definitely a legacy film. It literally was, I believe, the first holiday horror movie, which now, like, I think we touched on this with Pilgrim, but it's becoming way more of a thing now. We're seeing kind of every holiday getting coverage, which is awesome. But this was the first movie to really do that. It deserves a lot of credit, even just for, like, how insane would that have been in the 70s where there's no holiday horror films? And what did they start with? Not Halloween, but they start with Christmas. Like, that is fucking rad. That was the first movie to do that.
Interesting.
Yeah, totally. And now there's a ton of Christmas horror movies, which is awesome. It's all I'm watching currently. But like, I love that this is the thing that kicked it off. So I give it a lot of credit in that. It obviously established a lot of techniques used, like the POV in Halloween obviously was directly lifted from this. There's no doubt about that. I think John Carpenter even said he loved this movie, so I don't think he was trying to hide that by any means.
Yeah.
Like, I think you had mentioned when we were on a break, you had said Scream had to have absolutely been influenced by the phone calls. So I think it definitely has solidified its place in horror history for how much it did for the genre. And I guess before we get to the scares, what's your kind of take on its legacy?
Yeah, like I said, I see a lot of like clear ties to movies like Scream, Red Dragon, and Halloween. I liked the use of POV in this. Mm-hmm. I thought the camera was very effective about moving through space.
Yes.
And kind of, and the dialogue was a huge part of this. It just like, the dialogue moved and the camera just like kept pace with it. Especially for a movie from the 70s, visually, it moved. Even if the story didn't always keep up. Then, at least in terms of like the main plot, there were plenty of subplots that kept coming.
Yeah.
There was one moment in particular where I was like, this POV is very confusing because you have this great moment of climbing up the trellis.
Yeah.
Where you get that like body mounted POV. I don't see any other way they could have done that, which was very inventive. And then later you get this like POV of climbing down from the attic. And it's like very clear that the actor's holding the camera and using one hand to climb down, which is just very funny. Like guys, we couldn't have like used the body mount again, or like someone could have like held it in front of him. Like, why is he like using one hand to climb down? But
actually,
outside of that was the only flaw I saw, like technically.
This might be a good question for you. Actually, is so they filmed this in a legitimate house and not like a set. And so they had to like really work around like the parameters of a fully established home. Yeah, so I guess like as a filmmaker, what's your take on like utilizing like a fucking house and maybe where some of those weirder shots came from because of maybe just parameters that they had to work within? I guess like what's your kind of vibe on that?
Right. So this was to your point, this was another movie where they did the like the large depth of field through superimposition of multiple shots, right? And I think the intent was to have a classical feel to the cinematography, but from a modern perspective, it just felt confusing because you're not directing the audience's eye to what's important in the frame. Instead, like the one shot that really sticks out is when it's early in the movie. I think like Barb is near the phone or something talking, and you have the back of the person's head in the foreground in focus, superimposed.
Oh, yeah. I know what you're talking about.
And there's no reason for her to be in focus other than we need everything in the frame to be in focus. So it was just like a very strange decision cinematically, unless you're going for that like Citizen Kane, everything's in focus idea.
What did you think?
But
sorry.
then
I have so many camera questions for you.
in terms of lighting, it all came across very nice. They had like this great 2-point and 3-point lighting throughout most of the film that was just very clean. And at one point I even was wondering like, well, did they boom lights over the top of scenes here for some backlight, and or were they actually on set and were able to just like remove the ceiling and fly lights in wherever they wanted? So
I don't think
they did a very good job
I think they had to rig it
working
over
within the space.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah. So it was very effective.
Just again, sorry, we'll get to the scares and we'll wrap up before this gets too long. But with the cinematography, I was curious what you thought, because one of the shots that I really enjoyed was when the phone call was happening and you get kind of a shot on each sorority sister. I was curious how you felt about which in some of those close-up shots occur when they find like the little girl's body and you don't see the body, but you just see the face of the girl who found her. I'm just kind of curious what you think of those. There's a lot of close-up shots, and my last big close-up shot I can think of is when Jess finds out the killer's in the house. They're telling her to go, but she's calling out to Barb and Phyllis, which, by the way, that moment of acting was so fucking good. I can't even get over. There is such a distress in her voice, but it is very close on her face to get all that emotion. I guess, what did you think of some of those closer shots? Did you feel like they worked? Did you feel like they were too overused? I'm just kind of curious.
No, it felt very traditional, like establish a scene in wide shot, move into close-ups for the emotional moments, right? Mm-hmm. And that first shot you're talking about of panning around the faces of the sorority sisters, I was immediately impressed because if anyone's ever filmed on old film cameras, the first AC assistant camera is not always looking at a lens. He has used a tape measure to pull focal lengths to each position. Oh. He's marked it on the camera, and then he's sitting there like pulling like 3 feet, 12 feet, 8.5 feet. And so being able to like pan through that whole scene of like, there are at least like 5-6 focal pulls, where I was like,
At
holy
least.
shit, they fucking nailed it. Yeah, on
Yeah,
film, you're
that's
not
awesome.
you're not running through meters and meters of film there. This ain't digital, right? Where you can take it as many times as you need to get it right.
Mm-hmm.
So I was pretty impressed by that. And then going to just other close-up moments. I love, again, it's more of an editing choice in my opinion, of seeing the close-ups instead of dead girl body.
Which you don't want to do with a kid anyways.
Yeah,
that's fucked up.
Yeah, too fucked and not necessary and emotionally not as impactful. Like,
totally agree.
Yeah, you get a visceral like, ew, gross, I don't want to see that. But what you're missing when you don't show the reaction shot is how it's making the characters feel. Like this dad now discovering that people are dying and seeing what could potentially also be the fate of his own daughter is a very, very emotionally intense moment. And one other moment that I thought was fun is I think there were like 2 zooms in the whole movie back to back, which is sort of, you don't see zooms very often in modern movies unless it's a very like stylized movie.
Yeah.
And they happen, of course, with Mrs. Mack's death, where like she sees the body and it's like zoom into her, and then she realizes there's a killer, and then zoom into the killer. It's a very fun moment that's driven again by camera, just like holy shit. It's like the back to back, and it's a fun moment. So.
All right, well, and then I think scares are a good little wrap up to this. I do think, kind of similar to what we've been talking about, I think the way the building is actually structurally made makes it really good for that kind of lingering feeling, like that somebody's like can be observing people without their knowledge. Yeah, and I guess there's like, and I don't have a tuned enough eye or haven't watched it enough times to see that. I guess there's a lot of shadows involved to show that he's been stalking the girls like throughout the film, but just like some of those shots where we know he's lingering above and that he's watching them, I think it's super fucking creepy to think. That's like truly my nightmare, is that somebody would be in my house without my knowledge. That's like 100% my nightmare. So I think it preys on that really well.
My wife's too, for sure.
Yeah, and then I think that just again, maybe it's more of a female perspective, but of just you're getting this fucking creepy ass caller. It's very fucking upsetting, but how dismissive like the initial cop is as well, and how kind of scary that idea is. And even when they go and be like, this girl is missing, and he's like, I bet she ran off with her girlfriend. That's another very real world application that's actually like deeply upsetting, that I think can kind of get like brushed off because we're like so focused on the murders being scary, but that how scary it is to not be believed about the real life scary implications of what's happening around you. So I think they do a great job of giving you those practical scares, but also those scares that feel very internalized as well, or having a boyfriend that's like very aggressive and he's threatening, and it's like, it's a lot. And I'm lucky to have never had that experience, but like, I just think it preys on a lot of things that women face day to day, which is, again, we've said it's very upsetting that this conversation is still relevant, like when it occurred in the 70s. But I think, and that's why for me, this movie just hits a little harder. And again, it took a couple of viewings, but I think for me, it's like a lot scarier than maybe people give it credit for. So I guess what's your scares wise, things that work, didn't work kind of a thing?
Fuck, you're making me want to be more generous than my initial ratings. Because there is clearly a lot of validity to this movie and an impressive amount of relevance to modern audiences, not just thematically, but cinematically and directorially and acting-wise. So there's plenty to walk away and appreciate in this movie. I still think, being a little experimental in nature, as like one of the OG slashers.
For sure.
That it's not hitting as scary as perhaps Halloween was, the kind of like the follow-up sister film to this, right? But it definitely established the groundwork of what is acceptable to see on screen, how you can work complex narratives into horror film. I think is all some phenomenal legacy to pass on.
For sure. I think, we've said it a couple times, but you are 100% missing out if you're somebody who just sees a date and calls it and isn't going to take the time to invest. Like, again, this created significant groundwork. It has a really impeccable ability to balance horror and comedy, which makes sense for somebody who made a Christmas Story. Like, obviously the humor is there, but it's great to see that interwoven into horror without it feeling too jarring, because that can seriously be an issue with some of these other films. So for that, for how the cast is like influential as hell. Like, they're just some of the greats of all time involved in there. So I think if you chose to not watch this movie and you're still here for this conversation, I would highly recommend actually going out and watching it. It feels like a big miss to not. And the sequels, both, neither do justice or are nearly as effective, despite the fact that they had significantly larger budgets, times, and all that, does not hit as hard as this movie. So for me, that's please watch this movie. It's so fucking good. And if you don't truly appreciate it the first time, I would recommend giving it a second viewing. What's your wrap up thoughts before we end this? Sorry, it's been a long episode. Before we end this long episode,
go check it out. Put it on. You don't have to like focus in on everything. It's probably a movie that you just want to have on in the background and then come and revisit once you get the idea of what's happening. And once it catches your interest, you'll be like, wait a second, what just happened? That's kind of how it felt for me. I was like, wait, what are they talking about? This is really intense moment. I want to rewatch that. So it's definitely a movie that's worth multiple rewatchings, and kind of easing yourself into to really like start savoring all the juices out of it. Outside of that, I mean, thanks for tuning in again, everybody. Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays. Yeah. Do we know what we have coming up next?
So, at the moment of this filming, we have not decided our last one, but what we can tell you is that we will be seeing you for New Year's. Yeah. We don't know for sure what that's going to entail, but we are hitting the holidays up all the way, and then we are going to be coming back at you with we got a fun mix on our schedule of new and supremely amazing classics. I'm not going to ruin it yet, but we are going to cover, I believe it's in January, one of my ultimate favorite fucking movies of all time. I cannot wait for us to cover this movie. I'm so excited. So yeah, tune in, and we say this every episode, but please, if you have recommendations, whether they're drinks, whether they're movies, if you've got fun facts about something we're about to cover and you would like it on the episode, you can send us an email at podunderyourbed@gmail.com or hit us up under any of our socials at podunderyourbed. Yeah, happy holidays, guys. Merry Creepmas!